Madam Speaker, the so-called Separation of Powers Restoration Act would completely upend the administrative process by eliminating judicial deference to agencies and requiring federal courts to review all agency rulemakings and interpretations of statutes on a de novo basis. More than 30 years ago, the Supreme Court held in Chevron USA versus Natural Resources Defense Council that courts must give, quote, considerable weight to an agency's construction of a statute it administers. This makes sense because while Congress sets broad policies, we delegate authority to executive agencies because we do not have the expertise to craft technical regulations ourselves, and we rely on these agencies to carry out the policies we enact. Under the Chevron doctrine, courts respect the careful process undertaken by the dedicated professionals at our federal agencies, many of whom have decades of experience and vast technical expertise. Courts give deference to an agency's interpretation of a statutory authority if the interpretation is determined to be reasonable. The Chevron doctrine has been the ruling precedent for judicial review of agency decisions for decades. But this legislation would do away with this long-standing precedent, a move that would throw uncertainty into the entire rulemaking process. It would also empower judges to completely override the determination of agency experts, substituting their own judgment, regardless of their comparative lack of technical knowledge and understanding of the underlying subject matter, for the carefully crafted and scientifically based decisions made by agencies. It is the height of hypocrisy for the party that rails against what it calls judicial activism to support legislation that is the very embodiment of judicial activism. This legislation would also make the federal rulemaking process even more time-consuming and costly than it already is, forcing agencies to adopt even more detailed factual records and explanations in order to withstand judicial scrutiny, which would further delay the finalization of critical life-saving regulations. These are regulations that protect the quality of the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we consume, and the safety of the products we use. But this legislation is just the latest step in the Republicans' decades-long assault on the regulatory process, trying to add hurdle after hurdle on the ability to issue regulations that protect public health and safety, regulations whose benefits consistently outweigh their cost, often by many multiples. Slowing down the rulemaking process for these vital health and safety protections will put the lives of Americans at greater risk. And by eliminating judicial deference to agencies, this bill would empower the courts to make public policy from the bench, ignoring the careful consideration and technical expertise of executive agencies. I urge my colleagues to oppose this dangerously flawed legislation, and I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a letter from the Coalition for Sensible Safeguards, which includes more than 160 diverse labor, consumer, public health, food safety, financial reform, faith, environmental, and scientific integrity groups, and from the Earth Justice.
Without objection.
Thank you. I urge my colleagues to oppose this dangerously flawed legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman